Let's get into it. Coach Colin here, Soul Not For Sale podcast. We got Joe Rogan talking with Amanda Knox. Again, if you don't know who Amanda Knox is, she's a woman on the screen. She was wrongly convicted and put in jail, sat in jail for 4 years for a crime she did not commit. The crime was that her roommate at the time was murdered, assaulted, and there was a man that did it. And for some reason, this was in Italy, by the way, for some reason, the prosecutor looked at her and said, you know what? She did it, and pushed the fact that she did it, made this whole story, made it up because it's not true, and got her thrown in prison. Now, what she's talking about in this clip, and I think this is the clip, let me just verify. In this clip, she's talking about the relationship she has forged with the man who put her in jail wrongfully, the man who lied to have her in jail. That is who she's talking about. Let's listen to this. I'm going to skip a little bit here and there because I just want to get to her actually talking about the relationship. I mean, I would say, oh, wow, look at the patience on this girl. Look at the forgiveness on this girl. But this is almost forgiveness to a I won't mince my words. It's almost forgiveness to a dumb extent. No offense to her whatsoever. Just couldn't find a better word.
Yeah, it's on the nose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that whole question of what does it mean to be free, and what, yes, there's the physical, like, oh, you're out of prison, but then also, is your life the thing that you expected it to be, and how do you make your own freedom when you feel
Connected to something that you didn't really do forever. For people that don't know the story.
Yeah. We should do a little recap. Recap. Okay. Recap, friends.
Real quick.
Recap, friends. And you can go back to the episode of Joe Rogan. What number was that? Do you know off the top of your head?
If you just Google Amanda Knox, you'll go, holy shit.
They'll go down a crazy rabbit hole. Yes. So in a nutshell, what happened?
Yeah.
I was studying abroad when I was 20 years old in Perugia, Italy. One of my roommates was raped and murdered by a burglar who broke into our home. But I was accused of having orchestrated a murder orgy. And I was sent to prison for 4 years. I was sentenced to 26 years. I was put on trial for 8 years. And it became this international scandal where it sort of pinged all of the buttons in all the right places. This happened in 2007. So, early 2000s when the social media was really becoming a thing. The iPhone was becoming a thing. I think that played a huge role of people sort of going into their little echo chambers and fighting online. And so I think that there was, it was a case that for whatever reason rose above the level of other cases. Like, ultimately, this case was actually very simple, and it wouldn't have risen to the level of international infamy were it not for the series of mistakes that the prosecution and the detectives made at the very beginning by trying to pin a man's crime on me, a woman.
Yeah. And if anybody wants, there's a documentary.
Yes, there's a Netflix documentary. I wrote a book called Waiting to be Heard. And then more recently, I wrote this book, Free, My Search for Meaning, which covers, you can read it and learn about the case, but it's mostly about how do you come out of an experience like that and make sense of it. And then one of the big stories in it is how I then developed a relationship with my prosecutor, which I think you'll probably be in the camp of people of thinking that I'm utterly insane for having done that. Maybe you won't. I just remember that when we talked about this back in the day, you were like, this motherfucker.
Yeah. So you've become friends with him?
Friend is an interesting word. What is a friend? Someone else asked me that. Like, I was like, it depends on what you mean by friend.
That just sounds terrible. As soon as I heard that part, I'm like, oh, is she sleeping with this dude? I'm like, because that's, if you ask somebody like, hey, are you friends with this? Oh, friend's an interesting word. Well, the thing about it is, hey, you know what a friend is. You know what a friend is. You're more than 7 years old. You know exactly what a friend is. Are you friends or not?
And they said, well, do you trust him? And I said, well, I think that at the point that we are now in our relationship, I do trust him. I trust that he's telling me the truth about what he really thinks and feels about the situation. So I feel like I have very privileged special access to the mind of the person who put me in prison. And that is a very interesting, awkward, but also empowering place for me to be, because one of the things that really bothered me about this experience was not understanding why it happened to me. Why did this man look at a 20-year-old girl with no criminal history, no motivation to commit this crime? Why did he look at me and think, there's my rapist and murderer? And I didn't understand it. And I didn't feel like demonizing him in my mind or vilifying him in my mind was going to actually give me a satisfying answer as to the why of it all. A lot of people said, well, it's just because he's a bad dude. He doesn't care what the truth is. He's just covering his ass. Like, these were all really simplistic ways of framing his motivations, and I didn't really buy them. So instead, what I was interested in was going to the source and confronting him, asking why. But to ask someone, why did you hurt me, which I think is a really common thing that people who have been hurt want to know, is they want an acknowledgement that they've been hurt, and they want to understand why, and they want to know if that person's not going to hurt them anymore or not going to hurt other people. Like, that's really common for people who have been hurt. The challenge is that people who hurt other people don't like to be confronted with that fact. And so how do you start a conversation that's not going to immediately become adversarial? And that was one of my biggest challenges. But I came up with this methodology that I actually became so important to me that I tattooed it on my arm. So this is it. There are 4 steps. And the first one is find common ground. So it's this Venn diagram, find common ground. I promise you that every single person on this earth, you have something in common with them. Find it. So I asked myself, what could I and my prosecutor have in common? I didn't know this man. I didn't know what his history was, what his background was, but I did know that he, like me, was part of this really big, scandalous in the media case. And he very likely felt misconstrued or misrepresented also in the process, maybe dehumanized in the process. And so I reached out to him and I acknowledged that fact. I said, hey, I don't know who you are.
It's always liberal women that are doing stuff like this, you know? Am I wrong? It's always the liberal ones, you know? It's crazy. This is nuts. I just want to know if he's feeling okay. So I just wanted to know, you know, will he hurt me again? You're overthinking this too much. Just, you know, wish him nothing but the worst things ever. And, you know, you can forgive him for your own heart, and then you just keep it moving. And say, I encountered evil. I encountered evil, and that's it. I encountered an evil a-hole, and that's it. And you keep it moving. All this she's doing, this is too much. Overthinking it too much. You don't have to do all this. Could you imagine someone puts you in jail for 4 years? This guy basically gave her the Kamala Harris treatment. Same way Kamala Harris put that other dude, some dude, his last name's Love, put him in jail for like 7 years or 9 years or something like that. It's the same thing. You think that dude's just like, I just want to figure out what Kamala was thinking. I just want to know if Kamala's okay. Because, you know, on the other side of this whole thing, there's Kamala, and I'm just hoping that Kamala's doing the right thing. No. He's just like, damn that lady, and I'm glad she lost the election. I hope she's really as drunk as everybody says she is. She's overthinking this, man.
I only ever encountered you in the police office and in the courtroom, where you were someone who was trying to ruin my life. So you were a big, scary boogeyman. And I saw you in the media, and I've seen how the media represented you, but knowing from experience, I know how that can be very misrepresentative. So I said to him, I want to know who you really are. And I hope that you might be interested to know who I really am, because I don't think you know who I really am. I don't think that you would have prosecuted me if you knew who I really am. And that was the beginning of the dialogue. I went out of my way to acknowledge that he might have had noble motivations, even if he was wrong. And I think this is like a really important thing, is I wanted to give him radical benefit of the doubt. Maybe, just maybe, this like horrible thing that happened to me could have been the result of understandable mistakes. And if anything, I think coming into contact with the innocence movement and criminal justice system stuff and reform, all the stuff that I've learned after having gone through this experience has made me realize that like some of the most horrible things can happen and can be enacted by people who have the best of intentions.
This is ridiculous. Let's move on to the next clip that I was going to show you guys. Joe Rogan kind of lays this guy out pretty proper in terms of what he deserves in regards to what people should be thinking about him. Let's play that.
Like one of the things that I pointed out to him that just like drives me nuts that he continues to like somehow hang on to is this idea that I was in a threesome with like I was in a three-way relationship with my actual boyfriend Raffaele and this burglar Rudy Gaudet. And I was like, where are you coming up with that? And he was like, well, whenever I interviewed Rudy, like he talks about interviewing, interrogating Rudy, Rudy always seemed to have affectionate things to say about. He always seemed to like be interested in you. And from that, I can logically deduce that you guys had a relationship. And I was like, we like, I didn't even know his name. There's no record of us ever communicating with each other. No one ever like saw us hanging out with each other. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, if he was involved in the crime and you're involved in the crime and he's sort of talking about, you in an affectionate way, then logically it makes sense that you were in this, three-way relationship with Raphael and Rudy. And I'm like, that's not true. And he's like, well, that's what made logical sense to me at the time.
I think
Rudy's the murderer, just so you know.
I think the issue is an egotistic idiot that has power. That's really what I think it is.
It's certainly someone who has a belief and a confidence in their own abilities as a logical thinker. And I think anyone who is in that kind of position has to believe in themselves in that kind of way.
But not just that, like you have too much power. Like
fair.
There's not enough oversight. You have too much power. And then you say something, and if your initial assertion is incorrect, you then have to defend it. So then you do mental gymnastics to try to defend it.
Right.
At the expense of your fucking life.
Yes.
He was willing to put you away forever. Like he had to know. At some point in time, in the back of his stupid brain, he had to know that you were innocent. And he was willing to push forward and concoct some sort of a three-way relationship narrative that he still sticks to. Fuck that guy.
Well, and sometimes that's what my brain says. Sometimes
your brain should say that. Forgiveness is really important, but some people you just can't forgive. Like some people, it's like, no, you need to come to grips with the fact that you're a piece of shit. That's what's wrong here.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm thinking as well. 100%, man. I don't know what happened with the stream. Stream's on the fritz here. All good, though. We're still here. We're still locked in YouTube land. You guys don't even know.
It's not me forgiving you and you having this hall pass to be a piece of shit because you had this theory that you're still accusing me of. No, that's not.
So it seems like
you're bad at what you do. And sometimes people are bad at what they do. Sometimes you get bad teachers, you get bad cops. Sometimes you get a bad electrician, your house catches fire. Some people suck at what they do. And to like have this like eternal forgiveness, like sometimes it's not smart to do that.
Well, certainly. And I think that's
Is he still working as a prosecutor?
No, he's retired. He has retired.
He should be in jail. Like literally.
I do not wish jail upon him. I don't.
Okay, that's sweet, but that's a crime. Like what he did, it was not just a crime, but it was a conspiracy.
Yeah, I would have to say that I agree that I always wondered where the adults were in the room, like. The whole first 2 years of my imprisonment, I was like, this is all a huge mistake, and it's really obviously a huge mistake. And when are like the mommies and daddies going to show up and say, okay, kids, stop your squabbling, like let's straighten things out? And
There's no mommies and daddies.
There are no mommies and daddies. Yeah. That's the
man. You can even see it just like in this little frame of her face. It's somebody who's still very hurt by the whole thing, very traumatized by the whole thing. couldn't possibly understand. Like, even as she's explaining it, she's like, if he knew me, he wouldn't have done this. So I want him to know me so he could say, I'm sorry for what happened. That, I think that's what she's looking for. And in that situation, that's not what you need to be looking for. I don't know what happened to the stream either, guys. There was a bunch of weird stuff going on, but that's what she's looking for. And Joe lays it out perfectly. That's what you should be thinking. This guy should be in jail. He's a monster. And here's the thing. He's a prosecutor. How many in America, how many prosecutors? I mean, Trump alone, how many prosecutors were just doing a dirty job because they were being paid, whether it was Soros funded, whether it was DNC influenced, whether it was, working with Biden and taking a lower paying job with Alvin Bragg to make sure this case got prosecuted to the full extent that it could be. We've seen this 100 times. Some guys in these positions are just garbage bags. That's what they are. And they're doing it because it's money. Kamala Harris, again, I was making a joke, but she's a perfect example of this. She just didn't want, the reason that guy she locked up for 7 or 9 years or whatever, I think his name's something Love, I'm pretty sure. But the reason she locked him up and withheld evidence while he was trying to figure out, like, okay, I've been wrongly convicted and I just need access to this. And she's saying, no, you can't have access to this. It's because she just wanted her record to remain in a high standing. She didn't want to have this blemish on her record that shows that she actually convicted somebody wrongfully and they were in jail for years wrongfully. And God knows what happened to him when he was in jail, when he didn't actually deserve to be. So he's not cut out for that type of life whatsoever. She just didn't want that on her record. That's exactly what this guy, she doesn't realize that's just how it is sometimes with these people. There's a reason everybody calls lawyers scumbags, and there's a reason they do that. It's because by and large, so many of them are just fueled by money. And when they get into the political arena or when they get into these high stake cases, they just do it for the notoriety and they don't want to seem wrong. That's it. Terrible person. Definitely. And listen, I've talked about this before. For me, sometimes I can hold grudges. Sometimes it's hard for me to forgive. I can say it with my mouth, but it's still, it's hard to actually do it with my heart. If she can do that, that's great for her, right? Because forgiving somebody, it lightens you more so than it lightens that person. In fact, sometimes it doesn't do anything for that person. Sometimes it feels good for a little bit, but they still have to live with the fact that they wronged you in whatever way they did. But you get to move forward and say, I forgive and I'm done. And you get a clean slate that way for the most part, depending on what happened. But yeah, great if she could do that. But that guy definitely doesn't deserve it. He saw a young girl and said, let me just throw her in jail forever. His best case scenario was hopefully she doesn't come out. She's 20 now. She's 2019 now. Hopefully she doesn't get out of jail until she's 45 years old. That was his best case scenario in his head. The guy's a demon. I've really been thinking about this idea of, Jordan Peterson talks about it. Sometimes people say things and he uses the analogy of it sounds like Satan has stuck his hand in their spine and is working their mouth like a sock puppet. You got to think, some people, we may not know it, and it may sound crazy as I'm saying this, but some people are possessed. They're possessed and they're just walking among us, and we can't tell until a certain thing happens or you call the name of God at them or whatever it is. But some people are possessed. This guy was either, the murderer was either connected to the mob, because Italy. He was either connected to the mob or that guy was connected to the mob. Something was going on. But he just decided, okay, this girl gets it and I just get to keep moving. I make money and I live my life. He destroyed her life, man. It's crazy. And the fact that she's like trying to forgive him, no, man, she shouldn't be. Honestly, like, Again, forgiveness is great, but I don't think she should be forgiving this guy at all. This is a wild episode to listen to. I was just like, the whole time I'm just like, what is happening? What's going on? Like, for real? For real? You're trying to forgive this guy? Again, it's great. Great that you're doing that. Fantastic. But I don't know. I think it's terrible. What do you say? Diddy and Vince McMahon are evil. Yeah, they're evil too. But this guy's a special type of evil. Diddy and Vince McMahon put some women through some terrible stuff. This guy put this lady through some terrible stuff as well. He didn't do anything physical, but what he did to her, getting somebody thrown in jail for murder and having her have to be around other murderers? Man. What that can do to you. And female prisons are worse than male prisons. Let me tell you something. You know, talking about dropping the soap and whatnot, that's worse in female prisons. You don't even know. Way worse in female prisons. Terrible what this guy did to her. Anyway, I just wanted to say that.